if your favorite
I feel like that's my job.
Yikes.
Wow.
Things change. If your favorite flavor LaCroix is not key lime, you are incorrect.
You're fucking up royally. So aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, welcome to you guys. Wow. I'm back.
Yes. Happy to be back. I'm excited for today.
So very happy. Okay, so today's theme is haunted ships, which also includes cruise ships.
Yes.
So who should go first? New season, starting fresh. I say you go first.
Okay. Because, yeah, I'm excited about yours because I didn't do any cruise ships at all. So, but that's like very exciting to me to think about people vacationing on a haunted ship.
I've got some really good ones. So.
Yeah. Okay. Then I will start. So, okay. The first ship, these are all kind of old, although the hauntings are modern day. Except the first one is one that I mentioned previously in our Bermuda Triangle episode, but I think it's interesting enough to share again. So it's the story of the Ellen Austen, which was a ship that sailed from Liverpool, England to New York. And this was the one where on one of their trips, they saw a ship far out on the horizon that was sailing erratically all over the place. So they attempted to signal the ship, but they got no response. And because there was no response, they went to check on it to ensure that everything was okay. And the captain of the Ellen Austen sent some of his crew onto the other ship to check it out. And they reported back that there was no one to be found on the ship, and everything was in perfect order. The food was still there, the alcohol was still there, everything was normal, and no bloodshed or anything to indicate potential pirate involvement. So seeing as the ship was in great shape, they decided to have this crew that went over there sail this mystery ship alongside the Ellen Austen so that they could add it to their fleet. But shortly after, they encountered a very strong storm. They were separated, and luckily, the Ellen Austen weathered the storm, and lo and behold, there was this other ship way far out on the horizon again. So they were like, oh, yay, our other crew members must be okay. So they tried to signal. No one answered. More of the crew went over onto this other ship, only to find the exact same scenario as before. The crew was missing, but everything else was totally normal.
That's so freaking creepy, man.
I know. I just had to reshare that because I have no explanation. It's so mysterious. So, yep. All right, that was the first.
It's literally like the Black Pearl. Like I just
envisioned
that it'd be like a ghost crew now.
Yeah, I know. I agree. And they're all down in Davy Jones' locker now. It must be.
Davy Jones' locker.
Yep. So that was a repeat, but now I have, let's see, three others. So this one is the Berkeley Steam Ferry, and it was built in 1898, and it sailed mainly in the California Bay Area. And exactly, your stomping grounds.
Yeah.
And this ship actually was really important because in 1906, when the massive earthquake struck San Francisco, the Berkeley transported thousands of people out of the city, which was just being ravaged by fire and disaster. So that was very good of them. But on a more spooky note, there was one specific incident that is thought to be the source of the hauntings that occur today. So, in 1911, a passenger named John O. Norbum died in an explosion on board the Berkeley. And the cause of the explosion was found to be a bottle of nitroglycerin that was found next to John during the police investigation. And John's family they strongly asserted that there's no way John would have just been casually carrying around an explosive chemical. So they suspect foul play, which becomes more compelling given the fact that John had shared concern with his family that he felt as though he was being followed. So there might have been somebody after him. And because of that, the family believed that maybe somebody slipped that into his pocket or put it on his person or like even threw it at him because in order for it to explode, the bottle had to break.
Right.
So it's a little mysterious because no one has ever come forward with more information about that. But yeah, now in modern day, staff and visitors of the Berkeley, which by the way is open for tours at the Maritime Museum in San Diego, staff and guests have reported seeing an apparition that's wearing a trench coat and a fedora milling around the ship.
Why a fedora?
I know. I know.
Weird times.
Yep. And some people believe that it could be John, the one who died in the explosion, or it could be whoever might have been following him, given this incognito type outfit that he was wearing. Because there was one other casualty in this explosion. But he died a few days after. So who knows? But maybe he was being followed, and maybe this person was trying to be incognito. Who knows?
Maybe someone was like, yo, that fedora's gotta go.
Murdered for his fedora.
For his terrible hat choice.
Yeah. And paired with a trench coat, it's just not a great look.
No, it's a bad look. All around a bad look.
Yeah. So, yeah, but the current director of the Maritime Museum, his name is Jim Davis, and he has a firsthand story with this fedora-wearing apparition. So it was after hours, so Jim called out to say, hey, it's time to leave, we're closed, thinking that it was a museum visitor who was staying past closing. But when the person didn't move, Jim walked over to get their attention, but this apparition disappeared like right before his eyes. So how do you explain that? Yeah. Other than the fedora wearer, though, people have reported hearing disembodied conversations and footsteps, specifically on the upper deck of the ship. Quite interesting. Okay, then the next one is also at the Maritime Museum in San Diego. And
you gotta go. Gotta go there.
I know. It actually sounds really cool.
Yeah, it does sound.
I love any museum where they actually let you go onto something or have like replicas of things. It's just so cool. So, okay, this one is called the Star of India. It was previously known, though, as the Euterpe, I think. I think that's how you pronounce it because it was a Greek or Roman goddess. But yeah. Anyway, it was built in 1863, and it is the oldest working sailing vessel. And it was incredible for the time because it was one of the first ships to be made of iron rather than wood. But things were not that smooth for the Star of India, as there was a mutiny on its very first voyage, and I know. And on the second voyage, they encountered a terrible cyclone, and the stress of the storm seems to have gotten the best of the captain, and he died the day after on the ship.
Oh my
So
gosh.
maybe he had a heart attack. I don't know. This was back in the 1860s, so the medical care probably wasn't great. But yeah, so he died aboard, and then even more continued to happen. So the first story of a ghost that people feel today is somebody who is unfortunately nameless, but he was a crew member early in the boat's history. And he died after being crushed by the ship's anchor, which is just horrible. Um, I
How does
don't,
that even happen? The anchor is usually on the front.
I know, I was just going to say, I don't really understand the mechanics of this incident
Yeah.
because they said that he was down in the storage area of the ship where the crew members had their lockers. And I guess people on the upper deck started to raise the anchor, so then the giant chain of the anchor was
Oh,
coming down into the storage area, and he got trapped underneath it at some point, and it just, as it continued to raise, more and more of the chain came down, and he just got trapped, and people didn't know he was down there, so he died. Um, yeah, very
like what a
sad.
way to go. Jeez.
Mm-hmm. Takes a long time, probably, and just miserable.
Like bones breaking and stuff. Sorry.
Uh,
Sorry,
no.
sorry, sorry. It was out before I could filter it.
It's okay. Yeah, no thanks. I don't want to go that way.
Yeah, no, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, no thank you. But now, in this area where this happened, visitors and staff feel that there's a permanent cold spot right in front of the lockers of this area. So, yeah, interesting.
Classy.
Yep. But then another very active spirit is that of a teenage boy named John Campbell. He was a stowaway on the ship, but he was found a couple days into the journey, and to earn his keep, he was put to work on the ship. But tragically, while he was doing repairs on one of the ship's 100-foot masts, John lost his footing and he fell from the mast onto the ship deck. Um, yeah, he broke both of his legs and sustained other internal injuries that he eventually succumbed to, dying 3 days after the accident.
Ugh, falling is another way I would not want to go.
No.
Falling, like have just like a peaceful sleep in
Yeah.
sleep, you know?
Yes. That would be, yeah, I would love that.
That'd be ideal. That'd be ideal.
Yeah, definitely. So nowadays, visitors who step close to the edge of the upper deck of the ship where John landed after his fall have felt something that feels like a freezing hand grabbing them by the forearm. And this site that I was looking at was saying maybe this is John telling them to be wary of falling off.
Yeah,
So,
like trying to protect them, kind of.
yeah, kind of nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then actually, we can always count on Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans to, to give us the stories. And he did, because he did an episode. He did. He did an episode on the Star of India, and he interviewed a staff member who has seen the apparition of a teenage boy, presumably John Campbell, on the deck, and another staff member who has felt some unseen person trace the letter S on his back. And so they looked into it because he was not the only person to have felt this. And through their research, they discovered that the crew of the Star of India used to play tag to pass time on the ship. But it wasn't like normal tag where you touch somebody and they're it. in order to tag someone, you had to trace the letter S on someone's back.
No way.
So creepy.
That's so wild.
Yeah, they're just trying to play. Play tag.
Play tag. And they're also
Mm-hmm.
young too. Like I
Yeah.
always think about that, like back in those days when the life expectancy was so much shorter. So you're like
Mm-hmm.
middle aged at 18 or whatever, which
Yeah.
is so crazy. But
Yeah.
they were like in their prime and we're
Right.
like kids basically.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. That is interesting to think about.
So
Times
wild.
have changed. That's for sure.
So
Okay.
wild.
Then just one more very quick one that I came across while I was on the Ghost Adventures train is that there's a museum in Branson, Missouri that's dedicated to the Titanic. So, the museum, I was shocked looking at these pictures. It looks so cool because it's a very close replica of what the Titanic really
No.
looked like. Like, even from the outside, yeah, it was. I like want to go to Branson, Missouri, just to go to the museum.
That's
That's a
fucking
place I would never go normally, but could be worth the journey.
oh my god.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
actually very down for that.
yeah, I will send you the pictures because it's like they did the grand staircase. They have the replicas of like the living quarters and everything. So cool. Um, and it houses over 400 artifacts that have been recovered from the real wreck of the Titanic.
Whoa.
Um,
I wonder
yeah,
how like bidding on stuff like that works because I'm sure
yeah,
thousands of museums would want that, would want to do like an exhibit with all the Titanic stuff. I wonder how that, like how
right.
Branson, Missouri won. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, that's so true.
anyone from listening to this?
Missouri, yeah.
Missouri.
Yeah, I don't know because I also saw an article in the New York Times about somebody who got a pocket watch from a passenger on the Titanic and like no one else was bidding on it somehow.
That's
So,
wild.
yeah,
Maybe
I don't
we're just
know.
overdone.
Yeah.
We're done. Some
It's
people
over.
went, it sank, it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? But I'm glad they have it, and it seems like they're doing a good job. But um, I couldn't get any videos from Zach Bagan's episode at this museum, but they had written some stories. So they believe, the staff and Zach believe that the spirits and energies of the passengers could be attached to the artifacts that are now housed in the museum.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's like they have people's wedding rings, they have some instruments, which I read that the musicians on the ship played throughout
Yeah.
the time that it
Oh,
was sinking, to try to calm people. So I can imagine that those items have a lot of energy
charge.
attached to them.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So, one story that they briefly told was there was a tour guide who reported that he saw the ghost of John Jacob Astor the Fourth, who I think was actually portrayed in the movie Titanic because he was one of the wealthiest and most notorious passengers on the ship. Um, and this tour guide saw his ghost on the replica of the grand staircase, just like walking down. And the other was somebody who was giving a tour of their replica of the third class bunks in the bottom of the ship. They all witnessed this indentation appear in one of the pillows as if somebody had just laid down, but no one was there.
Dun, dun, dun. Although that really
Yeah.
creeps me out. But like dent in, like a piece of furniture, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
no,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
nothing to because how else do you explain that?
Yeah. I know, especially
The
when
wind,
you watch it happen.
right?
Yeah,
And then if you
yeah,
watch it go away,
right.
because then what do you do? Do you like try to touch it? Do you try to fluff the
Hmm.
pillow? Or
I
do
don't
you
know
say
because you might run into a ghost head.
exactly? Would you be like, listen, rest in peace,
Yeah,
literally and
yeah.
figuratively?
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
so about
My No, my uncle had that happen in his bedroom at his old house. That it was on the bed, it was as if somebody had just sat down,
mm,
then stood up, but
mhm.
he was just there by himself. So,
No, no thanks.
yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
and he lived in the same neighborhood as my parents, so I wonder if there's some weird thing going around, like in all of these houses in this neighborhood, because, I thought that my parents' house was haunted too, so
For sure, yeah. Same for the Haunted.
yeah, who knows? But that was all I had
I
for
love it.
haunted sheeps.
Now we have a lot of the Maritime Museum and is it Brampton, Missouri?
Branson. Yep,
Brampton. Um,
Brampton.
got a lot of places to visit.
Yes, we do.
Um, and now we move on to cruise ships, baby. First of
Yay!
all, have you ever been on a cruise?
No,
Your family
I'm
doesn't seem
not.
like a cruising type.
No, we are not. I don't think I would want to.
I wouldn't ever want to go again, but I've been a couple times in my youth.
Where did you go?
We went to Mexico and to Alaska. I will say Alaska
Oh,
is worth doing because you get to see the
yeah,
glaciers.
that would be
Um,
cool.
and we got to see them like calving and stuff, which is also like
Mm,
sad.
yeah.
But just like you just feel like this tiny little speck on the
Hmm.
planet. You're like,
Yeah,
holy shit, man.
some perspective.
Yeah, we had to wake up at like the ass crack of dawn to see it, but it was worth it.
Wow,
um,
cool.
okay, so I'm gonna start with. Ooh, where do I want to start? Okay, I'm gonna start with a couple like minor quickie ones, and then I'm gonna go into the most haunted of all, and then I'll end
Oh,
with just like a particularly creepy one. So this one happened on the Carnival Conquest. So it was, and this is like relatively recent, like 2000s. It's 5 p.m. and a woman and her husband who are obviously staying together. It's just the two of them getting ready for dinner, and they were getting ready, and he steps out onto the balcony, and she's looking in the mirror, like finishing getting ready, and she hears behind her this like rough male voice that's like, "You look beautiful tonight."
interesting.
He at first is like, "That's weird that my husband is like putting on this voice," but okay. And she turns around to like respond to him, and he's outside on the balcony still with the door closed. And so she's like,
Hmm.
okay, ugh, like weird,
Yeah,
but
I
probably just
know.
like came in through the hallway or someone, I overheard someone else talking, whatever. So
Hmm.
then, except, well, she also checked the TV because she was like, maybe the TV is on, but the TV was on like the menu page and it was already on mute. So she's like, that's
Mm-hmm.
weird. So she brushed it off, but then she hears the same exact thing again. You look so beautiful
Oh,
tonight. And she's like,
weird.
ooh. So she peeks into the hallway. There's no one there. So she freaks out and like runs outside to her husband to tell him what happened. And he's like, that's so weird. And then they find out that that same night, around that time, they found out the next day that a disgruntled male passenger had thrown himself overboard that night. So,
Whoa.
not sure if those things are connected, but
Oh,
very creepy.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very creepy.
So, this next one is on a ship called the Thompson Celebration. And it was a mother and daughter who went to the ship, had like a luxury cinema. And they decided to go one day. They didn't have other plans, and it was fully empty. So they went in, they walked like pretty far down and sat down.
Hmm.
At some point, like a few minutes into the film, like the film had already started, they see the silhouette of three people entering the theater, and it's dark, so obviously they can't see who they are. But they literally walk the entire way down to the road just behind them. and start like shuffling into the row behind them, which like
Mhm.
paranormal or not, like space out. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
weird when people do that, and you're like, could you
Uh-huh.
just go back one more row?
Yeah.
I imagine it's how men feel when they're at the urinal and someone comes right next to them. It's like,
Yeah.
give me a little space,
Yeah.
please.
I could use some space.
Give me some space, thanks. And so they're shuffling down the row behind them and like they can hear them. And at one point, one of them even bumps the daughter's chair. So like the
Hmm.
daughter, they're there.
Yeah.
So leans over to her mom and is like, I just get like a really creeped out feeling. Like, can we just go? And I think it was less paranormal and more like, it's weirding me out that they're
Mhm.
sitting right there. Why are they sitting
Yeah.
right there in this empty
Mhm.
theater? So they get, and the mother's like, yeah, okay, sure. So they get up and they turn to look at them, and there's no one there.
Oh my God.
Impossible, because it's the span
Yeah.
of maybe 15, 20 seconds, and they
Yeah.
were all the way towards the front of the theater, like halfway
Right.
down, probably.
Yeah.
And so they like booked it out of there.
Yeah.
They're like, what the fuck was that?
Hmm. That is very scary.
So another one, this was in 2005 on the Thompson Destiny. I don't know if those ships are, I don't know if Thompson is like a cruise line. I'd never heard of it, but maybe it is like in
Yeah.
Europe.
I haven't
Um,
heard of it either.
yeah, it was a father and son traveling together, and the father in the middle of the night wakes to the sound of the wardrobe doors swinging open. He opens his
Hmm.
eyes and shoots up, and there's a stranger like rifling through his things. And it's not like, oh, it's dark, I didn't see him. Like he could see the guy. Like it was like he explained like shoulder length brown hair, like about this tall,
Hmm.
like kind of a like medium build. Like he saw the guy, and
Yeah.
so like yells out, and the stranger like whips his head and looks at him and then dives into the wardrobe and is like, what?
Whoa.
And so he gets up and he's like runs to the wardrobe, and obviously he's not in the wardrobe, and the
Yeah.
door was on the other side of the wardrobe, but the door, it was a full length door and it was blocking the exit.
Oh. Hmm.
So he couldn't have dove under the door. There was like inches of
Yeah.
clearance. And
Hmm.
then he couldn't have gone around it because it completely blocked the exit. So he was like,
Huh.
okay, this is so weird. Like maybe that was just a dream. So he goes
Yeah.
back to sleep and he like checks on his son. His son's fine. And he goes back to sleep. A couple hours later, he's woken by the son yelling in an
Hmm.
unfamiliar voice. Like he wakes up and
Ugh.
like sat up, like yelling in someone else's voice and saying like
Oh.
something along the lines of like, you don't even care about the people on this ship. And then the
Oh.
son just like goes back to sleep. And the dad's like, we're getting the fuck out of
Mm-mm.
here.
Mm-mm. No way.
Super
Ugh.
creepy.
Creepy.
So
I was gonna say it was like Mr. Tumnus from The Lion, the Witch, and the
yes,
Wardrobe.
my immediate thought was like, wardrobe? I don't know, is Narc
But
in there? We don't know.
until the yelling in somebody else's voice, that's just demonic.
Yeah, possession vibes, not cute.
Hmm.
So this brings us to arguably the most haunted cruise ship, and according to Time Magazine, top 10 most haunted places just generally in the world.
Oh.
This is the Queen Mary. So the
Hmm.
Queen Mary, or the RMS Queen Mary, is reportedly home to over 150 ghosts.
Wow.
Um, her decades of service were both as an ocean liner and as a troop ship in World War II. She has carried more than 3 million passengers across the Atlantic.
Wow.
So she was running in service from 1936 to 1967, and after that just rests in Long Beach, California. So during COVID, there was a note about this. During COVID, there were always tours once she was retired,
Mhm.
tours of the ship, and you could even stay overnight. They closed that down with COVID, but it looks like it's reopened recently.
Oh, cool.
So, according to the Queen Mary's passenger logbooks, 47 passengers have died on board. However, many more servicemen have also met their end on the ship who are not recorded as passengers of the ship. They're not
Mm-hmm.
considered in that 47. So, it was built in 1936, as I said, as a luxury ocean liner, and the flagship of the Cunard Line, which I don't know what that is. But it now serves as a hotel and a museum. It hosts approximately 1.5 million visitors each year. It's a big
Wow.
ass ship.
Yeah.
There was an archivist who, going back to like deaths on the ship, there was an archivist named Bill Winberg who told the Los Angeles Times back in 1988 that during her service in World War II, quote, there was a burial at sea every 4 hours. There also are there also are stories of soldiers who would literally jump ship as the Queen Mary left New York, and who knows how many of these people drowned or made it to shore, end quote. So
Wow.
lots of death on and around this ship and that time, right? Because it was World War II. So
Yeah.
a few different highlights. So firstly, there are a couple rooms specifically that are considered to be very, I don't know, like famous for being haunted.
Mm-hmm.
First one is B. Hold on, let me make sure I'm looking at the right one. Okay, so the first one is B474. So this is connected to a spirit known as Dana, and she was named that by a paranormal investigator who did like extensive research on the Queen Mary through the 80s and 90s. So she allegedly is a young girl who roams the halls of the Queen Mary's still. Visitors report Dana haunting the archive and cargo areas of the ship, playing hide and seek behind storage crates. And according to, they say legend because not all of this is like perfectly documented. A family of four occupied room B474 and met their end when the father strangled his wife and one of the children and left their bodies on the bed.
Oh God.
He then shot his remaining daughter in the bathroom and took his own life. And many people believe that daughter that he shot is Dana, who
Mm-hmm.
continues on the ship to this day. So there are tons of like weird ghostly things that Dana does other than just kind of appearing in the room, in the cargo room, or in the cargo hold, and even around the area that used to house the what they call the second class pool. So there are different pools on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
She there's video evidence, and I literally saw the video. It's really clear and really creepy of a little
Oh.
girl saying, "Mommy, who is it?" And there are all these people with like night vision cameras, and it's like the guy with the video camera on one side of the pool and across like two people on like one of those like elevated platforms next to the pool, and
Mm-hmm.
they're all just like sitting there waiting, and then it's like, "Mommy, who is it?" And then
Whoa.
the guy's like, "Was that you?" And they were like, "No, dude." And they like lost it. I was like, "Oh shit."
Wow.
Yeah, so weird, very weird.
Yeah.
And that
Very.
what's funny is when I was researching, I came across that video first, and there's no mention of Dana. It's just like, this is a creepy
Huh.
thing that happened on the Queen Mary. And then I read about
Oh.
Dana, and I was like, oh my God,
Connections.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So very creepy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Um, so then there is the deceased officer, William Stark, who stole a bottle of gin while he was aboard the ship. But as he was drinking it, he realized it was not gin. It was, in fact, cleaning fluid.
Oh no.
And of course, died days later. He fell very ill within hours. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, succumbed to the poisoning. But a lot of people around the area where he was thought to have actually consumed the cleaning fluid, they hear inexplicable choking sounds.
Oh,
Yeah,
creepy.
so creepy.
Mm.
There is the Lady in White, of course, because there's always a Lady
Mm-hmm.
in White. She
Typical.
was once a young, beautiful woman who loved dancing, and her spirit is seen still in the salon, often seen beside the piano in a long white evening gown, dancing to music that no one can hear.
Hmm.
One passenger even followed her because they saw her
Oh,
dancing, and then she kind of walked away, and so they followed her towards like the elevator vestibule. But by the time they like rounded the corner to catch up with her, she was gone.
whoa. Crazy.
Yeah. So then there is another room, B340, where a man was found dead in his cabin. So it was found dead in the cabin. This is like the most famous room on the entire ship. Like this is the room that they closed off to visitors for a time because so much weird
Oh.
stuff was happening in there.
Hmm.
So a woman who was staying there, and this is like probably decades after this man died, but this woman who was staying in there woke up in the middle of the night, saw a figure over her bed, and then felt the sheets being pulled off the bed.
Mm.
She
Mm-hmm.
screamed, with the lights on. Of course, there's no one there, but the sheets were in a pile on
Yeah.
the floor.
Wow.
And a lot of people have noted like doors slamming by themselves, water going on and off, lights going on and off. And like having been on a cruise ship, I mean, on a newer cruise ship, they're still kind of like old school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Crank sink handles and stuff, like water
Mm-hmm.
faucets and stuff like that. Like it's not like, I don't know. It just seems really weird. Like some of these things with like lights turning on and off, like, okay, faulty wiring, but like the
Yeah.
water, like having to crank the faucet a ton of
Right.
times is like a little bit sus.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think like kind of the last straw, there was a housekeeper and like more and more of the staff are like, we don't want to work in there. Like it's creepy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there was a housekeeper who came in and put clean sheets on the bed. And then she went out into the hallway to grab fresh towels, came back, and the sheets were ripped off the bed in a pile on the ground. So I don't know
Wow.
why this
That's
ghost
his
just like
MO.
sheets, bitch. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so she was like, and there was nobody around. So she like searched the room. She was like calling out in the hallway, like there was nobody there. So she was
Creepy.
like, F that. So the room was
Yeah.
closed for a while and then was reopened to tours and overnights in 2019 after they kind of redid the room to sort of play up a lot of the supernatural
Oh.
things that happened there. So they put like Ouija boards and like spirit boxes and things like
Mhm.
that to kind of like make it more of a tourist attraction,
Yeah.
which is like kind of interesting and also like don't fuck with that.
Mhm.
Like why would you do that?
Yeah. No.
There is the woman by the pool. So this is one of the like full-bodied apparitions. So I'll go into a couple others that are just like, handprints or like a ghostly hand or things like that. But this is like a full-ass woman.
Yeah.
So she's known as the woman by the pool. People often see adult-sized wet footprints and puddles appearing along the edge of the first-class pool or near the changing room, announcing the imminent appearance of this specter. So it's like a little like warning, which is like kind of
Interesting.
like, a fun calling card.
Yes, like, hey,
Like,
I'm
I'm coming.
coming.
And visitors describe the spirit as a woman in her late 20s or early 30s wearing a 1930s style swimsuit. I'm like, ooh, cute. Retro.
Yeah.
The identity of this ghost remains a mystery, but she's enjoyed many refreshing swims over the past century, though the pool no longer contains any water. So that also is like, how are there puddles
Wet
and footprints?
Yeah.
If there's no water.
Interesting.
Okay, so there were two little girls, Sarah and Jackie, who actually died aboard the Queen Mary. They were 5 and 8 years old, respectively. And this is mainly impacts the staff. A lot of staff members hear inexplicable singing, giggling, and like answers to their questions. So if they're like talking to colleagues, they'll hear like little girl voices responding to them, which is like kind of sweet.
Yeah.
But according to those same paranormal investors,
I'm invested in the paranormal.
I'm a self-named paranormal investor. I would like to invest in Zach Bagans. Thank you.
Absolutely. Where's every penny?
Just a quick sidebar. There is like a huge cult following for Zach Bagans of women who are like, give me this. I'm like, are you ladies okay? Like, what's going on? Who hurt you?
Wow. Yeah. What's your taste?
What? Yeah.
I mean, his biceps are like massive.
Pretty impressive. He does have
into that.
I feel, but like,
yeah.
The rest of him, I'm
everything else. No.
The way he dresses, the hair, his line work.
And also the way he like provokes he's like so mean to the spirits.
And he's just like so like just overly dramatized.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, dude. But then again, he has a fucking paranormal investigation show, so
yeah.
So, sorry. According to the same paranormal investigator who I mentioned earlier, who did that like research over a couple decades, they believe that
Mhm.
Sarah is the older of the two, the 8-year-old, and she's very protective of Jackie, the 5-year-old. And so, visitors who come to that pool, the pool area at night where they drowned on board,
Hmm.
feel strong, sharp slaps when there is no one around, and they believe that
Wow.
it's Sarah, like get away, like slap.
Oh.
But they've said that after like 2 or 3 slaps, she kind of gets comfortable with somebody and then she
Hmm.
backs off. So it's
Huh.
really odd.
Yeah,
Um,
very.
yeah. So one of the like mass deaths that happened that was not included in that like 47 passengers was there was a time in October of 42 where the Queen Mary actually collided with another boat, the
Oh, wow.
HMS Curacoa, and
Hmm.
300 crew members died.
Hmm.
So guests will still regularly wake to the sounds of screaming and water rushing.
Oh,
And there
yikes.
was one family who experienced it like every single night at 3 a.m., or I guess morning, every single
Wow.
morning at 3 a.m., woke them up. And they would
Whoa.
think, of course, like logically, it's a drill. And so they'd
Oh.
run out into the like main hallway from their cabin and be like,
Hmm.
oh,
Uh,
mind, go back to
wow.
sleep. The same thing would happen. And they were like, what the fuck?
How
Oh,
disturbing.
yeah. So then the last one about the Queen Mary is a man named John Petter. He was an 18-year-old firefighter who died in 66. He was crushed in a routine drill by a
Hmm.
fire door,
Wow.
specifically door 13, which,
Mm.
oddly enough, takes 15 seconds to close. So there are a lot
Oh,
of people who suspect that someone held him there and actually murdered him,
yeah.
um,
Oh.
which is very creepy. Um,
Hmm.
but people also refer to the entity who is thought to be John Petter as Half Latch Harry. He creeps around in corridors and elevators near the engine room where he died. Visitors to the area known as Shaft Alley sometimes report being followed by a bearded man in work overalls who disappears near door 13. Other visitors to the area claim to hear unexplained banging on pipes, seeing greasy handprints appear on the walls, and even unseen hands grabbing their clothing or bags. And as you can probably already tell, he's very bold on tours. Like he
Hmm.
appears fully like another full bodied apparition at times, and like is very physical with people, especially on the ghost tours. One woman, for example, was walking down the hallway, felt someone grab her shirt from the back and start to pull her towards door 13. She struggled free and turned, and of course, no one was there. But as she turned back to look at the door, a large handprint appeared there before her eyes, like a
Oh my
greasy hand.
god.
Yeah,
Ooh, how scary.
majorly spooked.
Hmm.
And this is my last of the cruise ship creepiness.
Okay.
This ship is called the Brilliance of the Seas. So there's a mom and daughter who is 15. The mom wakes up in the middle of the night and sees that the daughter is standing in the middle of the room, just standing there staring at her. So she calls out to her, and the daughter wakes with a start, but is on the couch behind the mother.
What?
So she turns, her daughter there turns back, and the figure in the middle of the room is gone.
Ew.
Yeah. Out.
Scary.
They're super creeped out. They're like, okay. So the next morning, they're getting ready for the day, and the TV suddenly turns on. And they're like, that's kind of weird. And the mom goes to turn it off, and it won't turn off. And so she's like, okay, whatever, we'll just leave it on. And then the channels start flipping suddenly, like
Mm-mm.
really
No.
fast. And they turn off.
Nah.
So they left, and I think like told maintenance or whatever, like there's something wrong with the TV. Like, can you please go in and fix it? It's creeping us out. And they were like, yeah, yeah. So I think they just unplugged the TV eventually.
Mm.
So then later that day, the mom and the daughter were just in the room, and all of a sudden they get this like overwhelming smell of like rotten eggs. And I'm like,
Ew.
sulfur, demon.
Yep.
And the mom's like, okay, like there must be like a food cart with like something bad on it. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And she like peeks out into the hallway to see where it's coming from. and there's nobody in the hallway, but you can hear this like banging sound coming from like a service door a couple doors down. So she like goes to investigate, and there were two people trying like desperately to get into the hallway from the service door, which mind you locks from the inside, not the outside. So not from the
Right.
hallway, it locks from the inside.
Huh.
So
Oh.
they finally are able to get the door open, and they were like, "Were you holding the door closed?" And she was like, "No, of course not. I heard you banging." And they were like, "Well, someone was holding the door closed." And she was like, "No, no one was holding the door closed. I came, I heard you banging, and there was no one there." And they were like clearly like rattling the handle. Yeah, like so creepy.
Yeah.
So they ended up, the daughter and the mom ended up checking out like as soon
Yeah.
as they shored.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't stay either. That is so creepy.
Cruise ships, you guys.
Yikes. Oh my god. Yeah, that last one is too far.
Yeah, too
Too
far.
far.
Yeah, the TV flipping channels, I didn't love that.
No, that just makes me uneasy. I was gonna, yeah, if you were gonna say that it started flipping through the channels when the TV was unplugged, I was gonna just cancel it.
No. We're canceling. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
We're done. We're ending it right here.
Yep, it's canceled.
She made it through the exorcisms. She made it through the demons.
Too far. Yeah, what a weird place to draw the line, but you know.
To each his own. So that concludes episode 1 of season 2. I'm Olivia, and that is Amy, and this is Girls on Spooky.
We don't really introduce ourselves anymore, do we?
No, we don't, but we've done it at the end. So, and hopefully if you're listening, then you already know who we are because you clicked on the podcast. So
yep.
We'll be better about it. We'll be better about it. But follow us on social at Girls Gone Spooky on Facebook and Instagram, and email us your stories or any theme ideas or literally anything. To girlsgonespooky@gmail.com. You also can just DM us on social.
Yep.
And with that, stay spooky, my friends.
Stay spooky. Bye.